What's going on, everybody? Thunderdome Puckcast, it's back. It's been 2 weeks since you've heard it. Let's hit that intro. What's going on, everybody? It's your host, Moose, for the Thunderdome Puckcast. Finally getting episode 7 to you straight and live here from the $10 Sports Man Cave. Hope you're having a great evening. Great end to your weekend. I think the Bears and Rams game is still a very low scoring game. Kind of had to turn that one off and watch some other stuff. But making some time now for the Thunderdome Puckcast now that the Bolts hopefully are going to be making a run here after basically playing like 2 games in 2 weeks with their trip to Sweden, getting some downtime. Recently beating the Rangers, however, at their first game back in Amalie Arena in like over 3 weeks, I think. Big 9-3 victory. We're not going to talk about that one too much today, but we are going to talk about the road trip. But before, we've got our ticker over to your right about what we're going to talk about today. As always, we'll do a rotating division check-in. We're due to check in on the Pacific Division. Definitely some surprises out there in the Pacific this year. Have a down year for the Sharkies. I don't know what's going on in San Jose. I think age maybe is starting to catch up with them, and Martin Jones not playing that great. We'll talk about that. Then we'll talk about kind of dividing the road trip into kind of a tale of two road trips here, right? Had our New York, New Jersey swing playing the Devils, the Rangers, and the Islanders before heading over across the pond to play division rival, and at that time, among the best teams in hockey, those Buffalo Sabres, 2 games in a home and home in Stockholm, Sweden, as part of the what are they calling that? The Across the Pond series. I don't even remember what the NHL's calling this one, the Stadium Series, Foreign Series. I'll have to look that one up. But Bolts bringing back 2 wins from Sweden, of course. So we were really excited about that, especially if the way they've been playing before. But before we get to talking about the Bolts, let's look at the Pacific Division. Couple surprises out there. Edmonton has sustained a lead in the division. I mean, at the beginning of the year, all the teams are clustered up, and it's nice to see Edmonton. Usually we're talking about Edmonton being a dumpster fire and how, after having the first overall pick for like what seems like the past 6 drafts, how can you continue to not make the playoffs, trade away Taylor Hall, make some questionable calls in goal, and I think they finally have it all coming together. It doesn't hurt to have the 2 top scorers in the league right now on your team in Leon Draisaitl and Connor McDavid, of course. So let's take a look at those stats and what they look like. Again, we'll look at our skater stats, and really a big story is what's going on in goal in the Pacific Division as well. A couple leaders who you wouldn't think should be up top, but they are. And it's really dictating play out there in the Pacific. So, as we talked about, both Draisaitl and McDavid at the top of the league, 43 and 40 points respectively. Draisaitl also leading the Pacific Division with 16 goals, and right behind him is Connor McDavid. It's always a good thing when you're leading in goals and assists, and that's what you have with Leon Draisaitl leading in both goals and assists, and McDavid actually is second in both categories as well. So definitely some offensive play from your Edmonton Oilers if you're an Oilers fan out there. It's really great to see things starting to come together for them. They've always been kind of like a soft. They have a soft spot in my heart. I want them to do so well. City of Edmonton deserves it. A lot of history with the Oilers coming out of the WHA. So it's finally great after some interesting drafts that things are coming together for the Oilers. Logan Couture having a strong year as well for the Sharks. Really, one of the only bright spots for the Sharks Erik Karlsson stayed over with the Sharks. Did he sign an extension with the Sharks to stay? Always among the leaders in offensive defensemen. 14 points out there. But really, we're looking at the Western Conference. I meant to put the Pacific Division. When I saw Kane's name, I was like, that's not that's interesting. But yeah, so Logan Couture, like we were talking about, kind of a bright spot. Not a surprise, though. Elias Peterson for the Vancouver Canucks. Did he win Rookie of the Year last year? I almost want to say he did. Just really taking his no sophomore slump for Peterson, heading into this second year of his career. Happy to see William Karlsson bounce back as well. He was in the 50-point season after such a strong campaign for the inaugural Las Vegas Knights season. A little bit of a step back last year. He's on pace to be an 80, 90-point player again this year. So it's great to see great action from Karlsson. Anze Kopitar really the only bright spot for the Kings. Jonathan Quick really struggling in net, and honestly, I think he's probably kind of on the decline and on his way out, with his backup likely taking at least a higher share of the workload than usual, than what you can expect for Jonathan Quick typically. Flames kind of everyone chipping in. Of course, not surprised to see Johnny Gaudreau and Sean Moynihan leading the stats there for the Flames. I think what's really interesting is Arizona's second in the division standings, and really it's just Nick Schmaltz is the first Arizona scorer here right now. On when you're looking in terms of number of points. Or assists, 16 points. So let's look at points. Let me organize that a little bit better. Yeah, even then, there's not an Arizona Coyote until you get to it. And it's Schmaltz at number 20 when you're looking at total number of points. And that's amazing to me, with Arizona being in the second position in the Pacific. And I think when we look at our next set of stats, it's goaltending. Darcy Kemper playing phenomenal for the Arizona Coyotes this year, and really, by and large, the reason why they are maintaining their second place spot right now in the Pacific Division. Do we want to look at anything else that's important? I always like looking at ice time. Of course, Burnsy for the Sharks, and Karlsson really top that. Drew Doughty, your usual suspects leading ice time, despite kind of struggling. But all those teams struggling. Might see a season where the Sharks don't make the playoffs. I don't know what we would do without their impending Western Conference final implosion. So we have the standings, and we'll have Edmonton, Arizona, Vancouver right now in your automatic playoff bids. I haven't looked at the Central. I'm sure Vegas and Calgary are all right there with... we can look at them right now, actually. Actually, Dallas would take that last slot, with Vegas taking the last wild card slot. Calgary right there, and Anaheim, kind of a little bit of a resurgence. They started off slow this year as well. And San Jose, really, I was talking a little smack, really not out of it. But all those points are so important at this point of the year. And I know there's been a lot of debate on Twitter and Lightning message boards of how some of us are overreacting. Points at this stage of the year are just as important as points at the end of the year when you're trying to make the playoffs or you're trying to solidify your position. You gotta be careful with taking these points for granted in the beginning of the season. So again, not too many surprises other than Arizona maintaining second here. Then again, a little bit of a toss-up with Vancouver right up their heels. Expect Calgary to make a little bit of push. So I think this is going to be a pretty competitive division. I think the way Edmonton's scoring, they probably run away with it. But I think playoff positioning is going to be pretty competitive here, especially with Chicago starting to find their game. Big 4-1 victory against the Sabres tonight. And Nashville, Minnesota kind of having a down year. We'll see what plays out in the next 10 games. I think that'll give us a better idea of what teams we have there. I think Minnesota's likely going to be on the outside looking in this year, and Nashville looking a little bit weaker than usual out of the Central. So that's been your Pacific Division update. Let's get right into it, and let's talk about this road trip. This first part of the road trip, our New York, New Jersey swing, and it did not go well. 1 out of a possible 6 points. No, that's not true. 3 out of a possible 6 points. It felt like a loss in New Jersey, but we actually won in overtime. Starting off with the New York Rangers, that was a very frustrating game to watch. I know it's been 2.5 weeks. Heck, it might even been 3 weeks since the away Rangers game when we actually were in Madison Square Garden. That was a frustrating game to watch. I know there's always jokes on Twitter of how the Lightning seem to run into backup goalies who are playing like they're going to win the Vezina. That's exactly what happened. It was Alexander Georgiev, I guess the heir apparent to the King, to Hank, over in Madison Square Garden with the Rangers. He played lights out. I mean, Lightning had a moderate shot total. I think maybe we got into the 30s, and degree of difficulty moderate at best. He made a couple key saves, but it wasn't like he was playing totally out of his mind. But he stopped all the shots he had to stop. Vasi had kind of let in a softie or two, and lo and behold, you lost 4-1 to the Rangers, who I think at that time only had 2 wins. Let's take a look at the box score for that one. Yeah, coming into that game, Rangers only had 3 wins, and with beating us, they went up to 4-5-1. So that was really disappointing. The Rangers was 3, 6, 7 points at that point. Well, we had 12. Again, I know it was the beginning of the year, so it'll tough to really see who's the stronger or weaker team in terms of points. But it was a pretty disappointing game. We did hit the 30 mark on the shot clock. Rangers with 42 shots. Actually, vastly. Maybe I'm thinking about the Islanders game. Over his average, I think Vasi's at about 90.5%. So I take that back, Vasi. He had a strong game here. I think I was thinking about the Islanders game where a couple softies in there, and it was a low shot total for the Islanders. But 1 out of 4 for the Rangers. The power play, I mean, I guess we'll take that. At that time, we were in the 60%, so this actually helped bring the power play percentage up. Bolts over 2 on the power play on that one. We have our scoring summary here. Yeah, we Lightning took the lead, but it quickly just fell apart there. Rangers scoring 4 unanswered, including an empty netter there at the end by Ryan Strome. Only goal for Kucherov, opening it up. So, by and large, a frustrating game to watch. Periods where we were really dominating, and then times when the Rangers really took it to us. It's just, again, we talked about coaching in episode 6, and this doesn't lend itself to as a good message of, all right, we're going to go on a road trip and we're going to lose to the Rangers. And then we come out the next night, and we'll switch over to the Jersey Devils game. We come out the next night, and we give up 6 goals, and luckily we scored 7. I think maybe a month from now we'll kind of be like, oh yeah, that crazy 7-6 Devils game. Wow, you guys remember this happens every once in a while, right? A couple years ago, we remember the 8-7 Philadelphia Flyers game, just back and forth, and both teams just didn't want to lose. But this Devils team is not good. We can't be proud. We can't look at this the same way. Granted, the Flyers probably didn't make the playoffs in those years that we're talking about, but still, this is still a bad Devils team with Corey Schneider, I think, only saving 66% of his shots. And McElhinney just really let us down in that game. Despite the Devils having 42 shots on goal, there were some there were softies anywhere. It was just kind of a crazy game and really frustrating that this is how you're going to respond the next night after losing to a bad team. You're playing a worse team, and you're going to play worse. Only one power play opportunity for the Bolts. Kind of a down day in the face-off circle as well. Uh, Devils going 1 for 5 again, helping out the average. Anything is better than 69.4% that it was at that time. Then our on ice leaders, your usual defensemen. Kind of sad seeing Sergei's time going down. We talked about in the earlier episodes of the podcast this year. We were excited to see him getting top minutes, but he's actually playing the least out of all defensemen over the last few games, and that pattern continued into the Buffalo game, and we'll take a look at those as we kind of check out the box scores for those. A little bit of regression. He's had some good instances of defense, though, so I'm a little confused on what's going on there. We're really asking McD and Shattenkirk's really getting some ice time here as well. I know Hedman was out for a few games as well, so I guess we were relying on the big dogs. I was happy to see Luke Shen getting some time as well, and he's actually pretty decently recently. He's drawing in a lot more, so I'm happy to see that we're utilizing him a little bit more as well, and really his work started off kind of on this road trip where we started incorporating him a little bit more. Some okay play from Volkov, -2 in this game. There's all sorts of minuses in this game. This is one where we sure did want to forget. Thankfully, we pulled it off in overtime. Tyler Johnson scoring an OT goal to salvage salvage the extra point, I guess you could say. But a game we should have had comfortably. Let's look at the Islanders game. This was really the letdown. Again, the Islanders only 26 shots on goal. One of the lowest shot totals the Lightning have given up the whole year. And I know for sure I'd have to remember the highlights, but I know for sure there were at least one softie, if not two of the five. One was an empty netter, of course, but there were some goals that Vassy definitely should have probably wanted back. So again, Thomas Greiss really outplaying him. Thomas Greiss having a pretty good year. I think we're due to check in on the Metropolitan either next week or the week after. We'll probably do our Atlantic Division check-in for episode 8. We might have to take a look at goaltending stats because Thomas Greiss quietly having a good year and solid seasons. With Robin Leonard moving on, and it's really been the Thomas Greiss show now. Islanders really not missing much of a beat there, despite the great performance from Leonard last year in goal. So again, kind of a disappointing game here. Islanders really controlling and taking the lead and really taking it over in the third period. A little bit of effort. McDonough scoring with about 2 minutes to go, and a little too late in terms of effort. Again, Vassy 21 for 25. One of the goals being Brassard's goal being an empty netter. Kind of a tough night. Little bit of a letdown heading into Sweden. So, thankfully, we had a week off, right? We had some time to regroup, a little bit of off time. I actually think they went over to Sweden pretty quickly, so it's kind of nice being in Sweden for the Global Series. I think it's the Global Series. And just being able to enjoy the game, and I know it was nice for Victor Hedman for his homecoming. He got to play in front of his home fans over there in Stockholm. But we really saw a different Lightning team, and it's exciting. So I don't know if maybe the Bolts thought they should give the rest of the league especially after this last Rangers game, should we give the rest of the league maybe a month head start and then we'll get going? I don't know what their strategy was, but they look so much better in Sweden. Almost like they look like last year's Bolts, and I know last year's we're not ever gonna match that level of success. I think too many things went right for us last year until maybe about the last month of the season and heading into the playoffs. But they look like they were firing on all cylinders. There was visible chemistry. I mean, there's been times when, especially when we play some of our bad games, where Kucherov's kind of dropping passes and no one's there, where we're just not where we're supposed to be in terms of positioning, and when we're assuming a player is going to be on the boards and he's not. We are looking like a cohesive unit again, and that definitely is exciting, and it should be scary for the rest of the NHL that we're finally starting to get our stuff together, if you will. So, big 3-2 win here for the Lightning. First game of the Global Series, coming out to a 2-0 lead. Sabres cutting it to 1 and scoring a late goal to give us a little bit of stress. But Gord, Killorn, and Cooch were your goal scorers. 0-for-2 in the power play for the Sabres. Average is going up. Gotta love it. And Bolts 1-for-4 and dominating the faceoff circle and shot clock. This was a good game. I saw highlights of this one. I unfortunately was at work, so I couldn't watch it live on TV. But viewing the highlights, definitely some. This was the dominance that we're used to, and we were concerned, and we talked about Buffalo. Buffalo seems to be trending down right now, so maybe slumping a little bit. Looks like they had Olmark start for him this game. And then second game of the series, again, Bolts a little bit closer, I would say. And you'll see face-offs were a lot more even. Shots were a lot more even. Definitely an offensive game. Bolts, but actually Sabres, man, when you look at the blocks, Sabres putting a lot of rubber towards the net. Bolts getting in the way of 18 of those. But all in all, these are the games you have to win sometimes. And it's good to see the Lightning getting close again to the Sabres record. And let me tell you, I know we've talked about the fourth line and so much love for the fourth line, but I absolutely love Pat Maroon. What a great signing. Has some soft hands. I'm always impressed by some of the moves and the way he's able to rag the puck and keep possession. To me, it's just such an upgrade, and especially with Seti Paquette coming back from injury, that's been such a great line with Maroon and Paquette playing together. Victor getting on the scoreboard as well. I was happy to see that in front of the home crowd. Maroon, wow. I forgot Maroon had 2 goals in that game. Good to see Matthew Joseph on that scoreboard. It's been a little bit disappointing. I thought he was going to be my breakout player of the year, but we still have the rest of the season to go, so we'll break there. Did McElhenney start this one? Carter Hutton started for the Sabres, and yes, Curtis McElhenney started this for the Bolts. He's been solid lately. This 40 out of 43, I'll have to give it to him. He's really kept it in there for the Bolts, and then even against the Devils, I mean that's 2 games in a row he's faced 40 shots, if not more, and he's doing the best he can for a team that's defensively giving up probably, I'd say, top 7 in shots given up as a defensive unit. So all in all, successful road trip. Lightning keeping it going by beating the Rangers soundly over the weekend, or I think it was Friday maybe. Big 9-3 victory for your Tampa Bay Lightning, and we'll talk about that one on episode 8, of course. We'll take care of the homestand before they once again go on the road. It always seems like they're on the road. What's going on? So hopefully we'll get a nice solid homestand heading into December. Is usually when we get rewarded with some home games that I'm hopefully going to be able to go to as well when I am in town for Christmas. Wanted to give some love to Stamkos because Stamkos has played. He's leading us in statistics, both goals and points. He actually might be leading in assists as well. So I want to I want to give a big shout out to Stamkos, and let me verify. So I was looking at stats the other day, and I was really excited that it seemed like he was leading the Lightning in both goals, assists, and then therefore points. Let me take a look, and I'm pretty sure I'm not crazy. Yep, he's up. So after the Rangers game, now up to 7 goals. Of course, he scored his 400th goal. So a big congratulations to Stammer. And in true Stammer fashion, in his post game interview, Stammer's like, "Well, I wish it could be 500," and that's of course a reference to some of the games and seasons he's missed because of injury. And he's right. I mean, he's had a couple tough breaks, quite literally, with his leg and a few other body parts where we honestly could be, talking about 500 goals really, really early in his career. So we're happy for you, Stammer. 7 goals so far, 13 assists, also leading the team for a grand total of 20 points. I think we got that rolling down under us as well on the ticker. So Stamkos is really taking the captainship and really leading the team. Really excited to see him up in the standings or in the statistics this year. It's usually Cooch and others leading the way. So happy to see Stamkos leading the way for us this year. And I wanted to talk about, as we close off for this episode, some of the improvement we've seen. And you've seen some of the stats down below on the ticker. Most impressively, it's been a big increase for penalty kill. And this was going to be our bugaboo. We've talked about it almost every episode, and I'm finally happy to see us trending upward. I think we're in the upper 20s now. In terms of percentage, I think we're nearing 75%. And then when you have a 32% power play, which is now number 1 in the league, I mean, you're going to get results, and we can, assuming that we still get our usual number of penalty and opportunities on the power play, I guess we can sacrifice a penalty kill, a shorthanded goal here, not shorthanded goal, a goal on the power play, if you will, or a goal when we're shorthanded. So really vast improvement, and that you see that we're 22nd in the league now. A big jump from a few shows ago. As low as 29th in the league, and what seemed like the worst penalty kill in the league. And after a 5 out of 8 performance against the Rangers, 32% on the power play. Hopefully that we can sustain that a little bit, keep it up in the upper 20 percentile, and we should be set to go. So what to expect moving forward, and what our schedule looks like as we get ready to embark on what seems to be another road trip. I'm hoping that we're going to see continuous improvement. Vasi, someone who's really not playing well, unfortunately, is Vasi. He shows flashes of brilliance, and then he has kind of a stinker of a game, or he gets bailed out by the fact that we scored more goals than the opposition. I think a good example of that is some of these close games that we've been playing, where really he's given up 3 and 4 goals pretty consistently, and we've been fortunate that we're scoring more. Curtis McElhinney, I think, has come a long way too. He was in the 80 percentage for save percentage, and I think they're both over 90% at least. I'm hoping Vasi can start trending towards 91, 92%. And part of that falls on the defense as well. We've had some interesting play defensively to keep it nice, but I have been encouraged by some of these last games that we've had really come together. Don't like the fact that we gave up 40 goals or 40 shots again against the Sabres, but again, we just gotta keep working, getting those lanes, keep blocking, and minimize opportunities for shots on goal. Oh, there's the Atlantic standings again. Not surprisingly, Lightning 6th, but they've played like 5 fewer games than everyone else. So, assuming that maybe they win 3 or 4 out of those, they actually would That'd be good enough for about third in the division, maybe second if they won that fourth extra game. That is it for us in this edition of Thunderdome Puckcast. Hope you liked this episode. I'm encouraged by where we're going. I still think we're on track for the playoffs, despite the Lightning's best efforts to make us think otherwise and get on that early panic ship. But I think we're going to be okay. I think we're settling in. Got to get Vasi. Vasi hopefully finds his game here as we get into the end of November, into Thanksgiving, and into the grind of December. We'll have some home games as well that should hopefully help. It's been your host, Moose. Thank you so much for listening for the Thunderdome Puckcast. Be on the lookout for this. Of course, you're probably watching this on Twitter, or should be watching this on YouTube. Make sure to be looking out for the announcement in the next week or so for the release of our episodes on your podcasting platforms. We're going to go with Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify as well. So we should be setting all that up. We've heard the feedback. It's hard to listen to us on YouTube, especially if you're not paying for the paid version of YouTube that lets you play stuff in the background. And you don't always want to be watching video as well, even though we have awesome graphics, but sometimes you just want to be listening to what's going on as you're driving in your car. Definitely understand that. So we'll get these on podcast platform as soon as we can. It's been your host, Moose. We will see you next week on your next edition of the Thunderdome Puckcast. Have a great week. Go Bolts.